Previously on Caseline, McCullough v. Maryland, a martial court case from 1819. The Supreme Court established that states cannot tax instruments of the national government, backing McCullough's case in which he refused to pay Maryland's tax.
Following McCullough v. Maryland, several states, led by Virginia and Ohio, defied the Supreme Court ruling. Ohio, for instance, sent state officers to vaults of a branch of the Bank of the United States to seize $100,000 in state taxes. Discord among the states grew, with criticisms of the federal court appearing commonly in newspapers.
And Mendes Cohen. Can you give us some background information on your case?
Okay, so we were authorized by Congress to sell tickets that would benefit the District of Columbia in the state of Virginia. They accused us of violating their state laws and then declared themselves as the final arbiters of dispute between the state and national governments.
That's really interesting. How do you guys go about preparing your defense?
We knew it would be a long shot, so we decided to hire a really good lawyer. In the end, the decision was made to hire Mr. Pickney and Mr. Ogden to represent us in court. They were proven professionals, and in the end, I think we made the right choice.
But aren't they a bit expensive?
Yeah.
The state of Virginia fined the Cohens $100 for their violation. Pinkney and Ogden, combined, costed over $3,000 per day.
Any reason why you chose to pay so much for a simple fine? Why didn't you just pay the $100?
Well, we knew this was a case on a grander scale than just the state government, so the implications of this verdict would probably affect the Constitution in some way, so a higher up lawyer was a very good idea.
Hey, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
After interviewing the Cohens brothers, it was clear that they realized that their case wasn't just a run-of-the-mill court matter. They lured up with two expensive and high-level pros to represent their case, ready to bring it up to the Supreme Court.
Hello, Mr. Pinkney. Thank you for coming today. So, why did you choose to represent the Cohens in this case?
They had a lot of money. Okay, it looked like an important case. Something that would change the way this country viewed interactions between the state and federal governments. Something groundbreaking, something like major that could change the Constitution. And they're also family friends, so I figured I could just help a brother out.
So, what made you think of this case as so important? After all, it's just a state fine, right?
Okay, you have to realize that this took place in a time where a rift of immense proportions was growing between the Supreme Court and the state governments. A lot of which was caused by the McCullough decision. You don't need me to explain that decision to you, right?
I have a general understanding of it, but sure, go ahead and explain it.
Okay, so I'm just going to try and run through this as fast as I possibly can. So following the creation of the Second National Bank, Maryland decides to tax banknotes out of any out-of-state banks, of which the only one was the Second National. Maryland is slowing down National number 2, so one of the bankers gets fed up and refuses to pay the tax. All fiasco ensues, with following the decision the states were in disarray over how to deal with the federal government. And as Americans love to do, we actively start bashing it in public. The case seemed like an opportunity for the Supreme Court to finally flex its muscles in a show of power, basically saying, we are part of the federal government, and while you states may have some power over your puny courts, ultimately we have supremacy over them.
So how could the Supreme Court turn a case like this, regarding a state fine, into a show of power?
Have you ever heard of the necessary and proper clause of the Constitution?
Nope. Please explain it to me.
It also goes by the name of the Elastic Clause, located in Section 8, Clause 18. It basically states that Congress can pass any law that it feels will aid the enforcement of Congress's power. It's why the McCullough case was so significant. Congress could now pass whatever laws it felt were necessary, and while the Supreme Court could still check this power, it represented a growth of power for the Congress. But did you interview the Cohens for this long?
No, they didn't seem to know what they were saying. Anyway, how does the Elastic Clause factor into this Cohen's case?
The Elastic Clause is a critical factor as to why the Supreme Court wanted to review the case at all. It had to do with the federal court versus the state courts.
Okay, thank you for your time.
No problem.
Taking time out of your day to do this interview with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
To get us started, tell me about the implications of a court decision on this issue.
So this court decision really was debated heavily, but the decision ended up unanimous. The matter of fact was, this was very much a case about states' rights as opposed to federal power. We believe that power vested within the federal government will help unify and strengthen America. As a nation, and as opposed to a more fragmented nation, we cannot allow something like that to happen. If our ruling were to reflect that we prioritize states' rights, that would ultimately fragment this nation, which is why, in this pivotal decision, we established that there is no sovereign state independent of the Union, but rather a united and cohesive nation working together in a sense that is very much similar to the debate of the Articles of the Confederation versus the Constitution.
So what made the Supreme Court so eager to review this court case?
The Cohens brothers had pointed out to us that they shouldn't have been fined because they were technically protected by the Congress, who authorized the DC library.
How did the federal government confirm that they had the final say on this court case?
If you look at Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, it states that the Supreme Court shall have jurisdiction in all cases, in law and equity, and this should be made under their authority. We had found out that since the state sued the Cohens brothers, we should be able to consider them as a party. Therefore, the case was within our jurisdiction.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
I think we've covered everything that needs to be said.
All right, thanks for your time.
No problem.